pitch-black darkness and freezing winds ripping through a mountain pass. When a soldier stands guard at the border, the immediate reality is survival against the elements. To hold these lines, they carry the weight of the state. Kevlar, assault rifles, and heavy armored vehicles stationed deep in the snow. That is the visible armor required to defend a nation. But there is another kind of weight they carry, one that doesn't show up on an equipment manifest. Beneath the helmet, behold the quiet anxieties, the unspoken expectations, and the fragile hopes of the people they left miles behind. Every soldier staring into the darkness is balancing two entirely different worlds. They are the shield for a billion strangers, while simultaneously trying to stay alive for the 2 or 3 people who make up their entire universe. In the quiet hours of what would become known as Operation Sindoor, one young rifleman stood at his post. He had been many only a few months prior to his deployment. For him, the bright red vermilion, the Sindoor, worn by his wife, was a literal vow. In his culture, it signifies a sacred bond, acting as an absolute promise that he would survive, that he would come back home. Yet military doctrine demands the opposite. The uniform requires a willingness to absorb enemy fire and forfeit your life for the territory. You cannot promise to fight to the death and simultaneously promise to return without a scratch. On a volatile border, these two contracts eventually collide. The moment the first shot is fired, the soldier is forced to choose between preserving the nation and preserving his family. That collision happened on a night of driving snow. Without warning, the silence of the valley was violently interrupted. A hidden enemy opened fire, instantly turning the freezing pass into a deadly crossfire. The Indian squad scrambled to return fire, but the enemy had the high ground and the element of surprise. Within seconds, the unit was completely pinned down under a relentless barrage of heavy ammunition. The newly married rifleman was immediately faced with an impossible calculation. If he stayed back or retreated into cover, he kept the promise to his wife. If he advanced, he gave his pinned-down squad a chance to survive. This is the reality of combat. It strips away theory and strategy. In the span of a single heartbeat, he had to execute the ultimate real-time test of his two conflicting vows. He chose the uniform. Abandoning his cover, he pushed directly into the hostile fire, navigating the frozen terrain and dense barbed wire to lay down suppressing fire and force the enemy back. His maneuver worked, breaking the ambush and allowing his unit to secure the perimeter. But the cost was immediate. As the enemy fell back, a single bullet pierced his chest. He collapsed into the snow. Staring up into the dark, freezing sky, his final thoughts bypassed the geopolitical victory entirely. His last words to his brothers in arms were a simple, desperate plea: "Keep my Sindoor safe." With that final breath, the conflict between his two worlds resolved itself. He had perfectly fulfilled his military duty, right at the exact moment his personal life was extinguished. By morning, the valley was quiet again. Operation Sindoor was officially logged as a tactical victory for the military. The state had secured its border, but an entire home had been lost forever. When the telegram finally reached his village, his young wife collapsed. Through her tears, she reached up to protect the vermilion on her forehead, the physical manifestation of a promise that could no longer be kept. The bright red powder had once been a daily promise of a husband's return. Now it stood as a permanent, unchangeable marker of a life given for the state. The absolute security of a nation's borders is never free. The ledger is paid through these quiet, devastating domestic tragedies unfolding in living rooms thousands of miles from the front line. That terrifying courage required to advance into a crossfire is built on 2 pillars. Patriotism provides the discipline, but the memory of family provides the ultimate reason to hold the line. The young rifleman's choice is the same brutal calculation every military family ultimately underwrites. They endure the chronic fear and bear the permanent loss, so the rest of the population doesn't have to. Every time a national flag flies high and vibrant against the sky, it is held there by the weight of unfulfilled dreams and the sacred Sindoor of the families standing quietly in the background.